Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mr. Ali. Welcome to another Thursday evening's fantastic show on The Real Story on ZMC Network as well. And as always, I'd like to kick things off by sharing with you the latest COVID dashboard that we have. And for another week running, we are now showing a downward decline. So we have 485 cases per 485 positive cases in Birmingham compared to last week, which was 826. In terms of what that means per 100,000 population, 42.5 this week compared to 72.3 per 100,000 population last week. In terms of those wards that have the highest number of positive cases, please make a note of those that you work in, you reside in, or that you may frequent, and please continue to social distance. Please do not congregate at home, and you are only allowed to mix with each other's in their private garden. So in terms of the highest numbers, Ward End, which has 95 positive cases per 100,000 population, Shard End 89, Birchfield 80, Glebe and Tal Cross 79, Bordsley 76 per 100,000 population, and Lozelles, which has 71 per positive cases per 100,000 population. So today we have a topic that I am sure a lot of people are familiar with, in the sense of heard of the term autism, but may not know what exactly autism entails, what are the diagnoses, what are the impact on the individual and the wider family when someone is suffering from autism as well. Especially within the South Asian community, there is a taboo and there is a sort of, almost non-acceptance that there's something called autism. So today I have Christina Adams all the way from America to help me come and talk about autism. And we have someone here in the UK by the name of Mudassar Yasin. So both of you, a warm welcome to The Real Story on ZMC Network.
Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Ali, and to the wonderful audience in the UK. I'm very glad to join you from California.
Oh, wow. Walaikum salam. Mudassar, welcome to you as well.
Hello, assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everybody, and good afternoon, Christina.
Yes, no, absolutely. There's a bit of a 7-8 hour time difference. So thank you, both of you, for prioritizing this on a Thursday evening for us, but maybe an afternoon for Christina. So, I, someone who has spent his early 20s being a school teacher, we understand a bit about what autism is. But, people have heard it, but they may not understand what autism is. You have spent, your life as a journalist, as a mother, as an author, and as an expert on autism. Can I ask you, Christina, maybe use your background and your expertise and your specialism in this area to give us a bit of an understanding and a background of what is autism?
Thank you for that introduction. I think it's only natural that people are confused by autism because it is sort of a confusing diagnosis. Autism is actually kind of a larger term for a group of symptoms. And the symptoms, in terms of diagnosis, are kind of detachment from the world. People often describe a person with autism, typically a child when they're diagnosed, as sort of being in their own world. So you might see that they're detached. Usually the language is either absent or slow developing, or can be just very advanced, but somewhat unusual. You might also see repetitive movements with the hands, or a fascination with certain objects, and not responding to their name, not making eye contact, and not kind of presenting with a social smile. It sort of seems like they're focused on their inner world. And then, of course, as people get older, it can present in different ways. People may think that they have just ADHD, or that they have just another type of diagnosis. But older people are getting diagnosed now. This is a newer disorder in terms of the growth. We've always had people being on the autism spectrum in our world, but it is a growing diagnosis because there is sort of a connection to environmental factors such as pesticides, power lines, pollution, things in our environment that do tend to impact the immune system and can create a heightened risk for autism. So there are more people with autism in all of our societies at this point.
No, no, that's fine. Thank you for that. So when I was, a school teacher, we sort of termed it as a learning difficulty or a learning disability, and there was extra support sort of been provided to make sure that they were able to cope with the work. But there's also behavioural aspect as well with autism as well. And you mentioned around some of the causative effects. Do we know, or is there sort of more conclusive reason as to why some people are classed or diagnosed as autistic?
In this day and age, first of all, there is greater awareness of the diagnosis, so that does contribute more. There are more awareness of kind of early intervention possibilities, because a lot of governments have said we need to find the early children with autism and give them help, because the more help you give, the better their outcome. But then again, it is sort of a on the rise. And additionally, there have always been people that have had what they used to call, mental retardation, but now we call intellectual disability. And some of those people used to be classified as just intellectual disability when they actually had autism. But the rise is rare. The way that new identification is rare. The rise is real because the studies have ruled out just saying, oh, we used to call them this, but now we know they're autistic. That's a small percentage, but the systems are not in place that would have served a huge population of autism, and now we really have one. For instance, in the United States, it's 1 out of every 36 U.S. children if you go by parental and medical reports. And so everywhere there is a strain on the systems to serve this population that is growing.
No, absolutely. Thank you for that statistic as well. So in terms of the impact, so what is the sort of, day-to-day impact on someone that may be autistic? I assume there is a different grading system as well. So you could be sort of mildly autistic to maybe more severe. But on average, say if we go with someone who's sort of moderately, what sort of day-to-day impact will it have on their lives, but also on the wider family as well, and maybe the place of work or their school?
Yes, that's a really, really important question. That's really why we're talking about it so much these days, because autism now is classified. They've had different testing systems over the years. And now they classify it in terms of, needing more support, needing less support, and then needing the most support, kind of level 1, 2, and 3. But even your milder cases and people on the spectrum that are not even diagnosed can have difficulties in their life because of the way they socially interact and understand things. So they can have a master's degree but still have issues. But then for the family, let's say with that typical early autism diagnosis that we have these days, maybe 3 years old, 5 years old, 7 years old, they often get kicked out of the classrooms because the child's behavior needs more support and it's expensive. So sometimes you can't get that support. At home, the child cannot participate in the typical family activities because they have motor skill issues, they have attention issues. They may not really be able to kind of understand what you're saying, or sometimes they can understand, but they're unable to follow through with it. And they just really need a lot of support in order to take care of themselves, because the eventual goal not to change who they are, to help them become who they are. And so you will find the family struggling alone often. And so sometimes they can't go to a place of worship because the child might be screaming or running around, and people don't like that, and they find themselves not invited to friends' gatherings, and that's very, very painful. And also there can be a very hard challenge to the marriage. So any support that you can offer someone with autism, please don't assume that they won't come. Just invite them. Be understanding, and that will make everything better.
Yeah, I've just had a question come through. Say, look, my son is autistic, and I'm struggling to cope, and I need further support. What can I do? So, what would you suggest, Christina? I understand you're in America, but at the first port of call, for maybe a mother or a father, what would you recommend them or advise them to do?
Well, first of all, I have notice that every country should have a system, but every country also, it's difficult to access the help in the system. So first of all, you as a parent have to be the one that reaches out and kind of rattles the cage a little and calls and asks and insists that you get in that line and you get a diagnosis. And from my understanding in the UK, sometimes the waits can be very long in the public system. So you might have to go out and get a private diagnosis to speed the process along. So that's something you might have to do. But then there are therapies. There are behavioral therapies that help teach the child how to play, how to do chores, how to pay attention, how to look at others and take care of themselves, even toilet training, things like that. It's amazing how much therapy there is out there for every little aspect of life. But then there's also speech therapy. They almost always need speech therapy. Even if they can talk at a very advanced level, they may need to learn how to have a conversation and not kind of say the same thing or the same topic over and over again. And one thing I'd like people to understand too is when a child or a person with autism is properly tested, their IQ is often higher than the average person's IQ. So they are very smart people. And so getting therapy for them and things like that is not a waste. It's actually really great to help them reach their potential. Plus, for the early stage parent, diet and biomedical support that you can get from professionals and other parents can help you. It's very important because many children and people on the autism spectrum do better by removing dairy products and adding other things to their diet and that medical support.
No, well said, Christina. And sometimes we do have this misconception of the notion that people of a autistic nature may be dropouts or may not do well academically. However, they are, by and large, quite successful. A lot of people that may be musicians or may do well in their particular profession are those of autistic nature, just because of the way they're wired, and they are maybe bring a different aspect and different way of thinking and a different skill set to the industry or to the profession. And I think that certainly brings them or makes them quite unique. So, what are your thoughts about that?
That is absolutely true. Many people with autism have really a great intellect and a really excellent perspective on things. Sometimes they have a gift at pattern recognition where they can kind of detect patterns in things that others do not. Sometimes they can just be great at a lot of different things like art, like language, things like that. Sometimes people with autism will sometimes say you will find a lot of professors on the autism spectrum in universities. However, the sad part is that because of their difficulties, sometimes in coping with systems and interaction and paperwork and things like that can be very difficult. They need support because so many adults, like the vast majority of adults with what they used to call Asperger's syndrome or autism, are unemployed. So there is movement now to help hire people with autism, but they do need support in the workplace. So that's the thing. You don't want to put a person with autism in the workplace without the patience of the employer and job coaches and things like that. And so here in California, we can have a job coach that will come to the work site. Or not even come and just talk on the phone to the person, if that's all they need, to give them advice on how to be employed and deal with other people.
No, fantastic. You mentioned earlier about some of the overtly characteristics and behavior of people that may be, or especially children that may be autistic, is that they may do their attention span is quite short. They may do something, they may say something which may bring untoward attention, certainly in a family or in a social gathering, and that be quite off-putting for others and also for for the parents and for the immediate family. We as a society are quite regimented. We like things to be done in a certain way, and anything that doesn't quite fit that norm, people do sort of start muttering, and they start looking in a weird way, thinking, oh yeah, there's something not right. They haven't brought up the kids. How much of a change or acceptance must the wider society play to accept that everyone is different? We got to accept and don't judge, and if children are behaving and are unique, allow them to flourish and grow in their own way, rather than for us all to be robots, so to speak.
I absolutely love that topic. So first of all, as a mother, I have suffered through many humiliating moments with my child doing things that were embarrassing. And now that he is in college and doing great, he never does anything like that. But back in the day, when I remember once him being on the stage, and had given a great performance, and everyone clapped, and then he said some joke. He thought it would be funny, but he kind of insulted the local baseball team, and that did not go very well. So I threw my head in shame many times, but now he's hilarious and funny, so he doesn't do that. But the whole thing that I learned when I first entered this world of disability, which you have to do when your child has any disability, you have to realize they have every much as big of a right to be here as any other human being on this planet. They're entitled to be here. They're entitled to go to different spaces. They're entitled to live their lives. And so they're as equal as anybody else, and they are also just people. Get to know them because they might seem different or be different in some way, but they are really just people with their own likes and dislikes. They are our friends, neighbors, family members.
Absolutely, Christina. And I want to sort of just maybe sort of widen that discussion. You've obviously, you're talking about your experience as a, if you don't mind me saying, as a white person in America. We have also, I'm from a South Asian background, from the Indian subcontinent, from Pakistan. We like to have our children being disciplined, behave in a certain way, only speak when they're spoken to, so on, so on. So you can imagine in that sort of environment where there's a lot of social pressures to conform for anyone who is autistic, that sort of stigma, that taboo is then magnified. I'm going to give you obviously the first chance to sort of talk about, what your thoughts or advice may be to the listeners and viewers, and then I'm going to bring Mudassar in as well, to give his unique perspective as someone from that background as well.
Yes. Well, thank you for that. In my work, because I'm the author of 2 books, A Real Boy, which is about my son's early autism period, and the second book, which is new, called Camel Crazy, about how I had the idea that camel milk would help my son's autism symptoms, and it did. So that work has brought me into contact with people from all over the world. So I very often am consulted by people from South Asian cultures, African cultures, Middle Eastern cultures, and here in America and the Western world. So it is always striking to me how all parents want the same for their children. We all want the same. And yes, I think some of us here in America let the kids get away with too much. But, we all want them to be self-sufficient, disciplined, and reach the goals and reach their education. But we've all had to get used to the fact that these children are different. They may not fit into that traditional mold of going to X college and going to be totally self-sufficient, but that's what we have to do. We have to adapt. And, if you are from a faith community, I'm sure there will be something that, shows that everyone is not the same in the world. Everyone should be kind to those with disabilities. I mean, that's kind of something that a lot of faith will tell you. So we all have to adjust. And yes, there is a bit of a stigma when you kind of get into a situation where society might judge you and say, oh, it's your bloodline. Oh, it's this. Oh, it's that. So I'm here to say that autism, they don't know how much of it is genes and not, and it can come out of nowhere, and it can happen to anyone, and it can happen to very smart families. So it's not like we're exempt from anything. We all are the same. We all don't know what's going to impact our lives.
Thank you. Mudassar, your perspective on what I just said earlier?
No, I think Christina has definitely hit the nail on the head and given her perspective from living in the US and from a different community. But here in the UK, or coming from a South Asian background or a Kashmiri background, we also do have, unfortunately, a stigma in our society, in our communities, that we often tend to brush under the carpet. And we always tend to have this notion that our children are just behaving a bit differently. We don't really tend to pay attention to their influences, not necessarily a negative, but they just tend to function in a different way. We have to try and manage and address. So I think really what we have been trying to do is raise the awareness of autism and special needs. Since we launched our project 6 years ago, the Hum, which has been to address the needs of these not so commonly spoken about topics that might not be so popular in other communities. And that's all, it's always been our aim to educate and raise awareness.
Thank you for that. I want to just pick on the point that Christina that you made. You said something about, the camel milk, and how that's helped, your child and yourself with autism. Can you sort of maybe share a bit more when you say help? What does that look like? And also, how did you make that inextricable link between autism and camel milk, please? And what evidence is there as well? If you can sort of maybe just shed that'd be useful.
Absolutely, and that's what has helped widen my world even farther because of my work with camel milk. So a few years ago, I was at a children's book festival in California. I saw a camel there, and I was very bored that day because my son was reading a book and I had nothing to do, so I wandered over and looked at the camel. I spoke to the gentleman who owned it, and it turned out that I said, "What else are you doing with this milk here?" Because he was making soap and lotions. And he said it's thought to be non-allergenic and be possibly close to human milk. And so that was when I had my light bulb moment. I think that this might be something that could help my son because I knew that his autism was connected to his immune function, and it was also very influenced by what he would eat. And he couldn't tolerate any cow dairy because it would make him hand flap and toe walk and go in circles and just, be out of it. And those are classic autism behaviors. That's what I talked about in the first book. But then I went home and I tried to find this camel milk. I couldn't find it. And then after a few months, there was a new article that said it would help some children in Israel. So then I knew I was on the right path. I managed to get some in from the Bedouins in the desert there. I gave it to my son, and he had an amazing improvement overnight. And ever since then, I have been a camel milk research person and spoke about the value of the camel, the amazing people that take care of it in our desert cultures around the world, and how the camel is also very good for many diseases and the potential treatment even of COVID, as the science is starting to show today with therapies that may include things that attack the virus.
So you said about when your son had the camel milk, he was better now. But can you just sort of maybe explain that in more detail when you say better or things improved in what way, and also whether you also drink camel milk as well, or can anyone drink it?
Yes. So at that time, I did not know what was going to happen because the only information on this was that one little article, and no one in the rest of the world had really heard of it too much. So it was kind of an experiment. So I gave it to him, and the next day he came down the stairs. He was better. He said things like, "Wow, Mom, I really love you. You do so much for me. You're so great. You make my foods, you make my medicines. You're really wonderful." And he was able to cut his food without it slipping and sliding all over the place. And motor skills, that means like fine motor, how you use your fingers and your hands, those are impaired often in autism spectrum. Suddenly he was doing better with that. And he was just so different. And he asked questions like, "Who's picking you up from school today?" And then he put on his own shoes and he picked up his own backpack and was ready to go to school. And that was astonishing for where he was at that point in time. And it was amazing. That's why the subtitle is "The Quest for Miracles in the Mysterious World of Camels." Even though it's scientifically valid now, it's also kind of miraculous. Thanks for that, Mudassar. That's the cover. So knowing that, I didn't know, he was the first person. And after a few years, I found out that camels were being milked in America by Amish people, who are very kind of remote pastoral faith community. Because of that camel milk, I gave it to my son, who worked his pain. So that meant that it was the camel itself. That it wasn't like from a different country or what from this country. It was the camel milk itself. And now camel milk is pretty much the only milk in my house, and I have it whenever possible, which is like almost 3-4 times a week.
Wow, just you talking about that marked improvement almost overnight, is really inspiring, and certainly has motivated me to have a off the wall discussion with maybe Mudassar with you, because I have a child who was 3 months premature. So you can imagine, some of the sort of challenges that he faces. But he's another one. So maybe I will certainly have the discussion with you later on. But but what's your link now with Christina, with autism, and with camel milk. How did you and Christina get in touch with each other?
Well, yes, we connected many years ago, and my personal connection with camels and camel milk goes back to 2004 when I went to the UAE for the very first time into Dubai many years ago, and I came across camels back then and the benefits of camel milk. I then went to my friend's farm in Qatar 2005, 2006, and they introduced me to the Bedouin culture, i.e., the benefits of camel milk and how they tend to live their lives, simple lives in the desert with camel milk and dates. And that kind of gave me the passion to learn more about camels and more about their practices. So over the years, I was learning and visiting them, and I brought that back to here in the West. 2015, we set up Hump Group as a community organization to connect bridges east and west through camels and things like dates, i.e., things from the Bedouin's wisdom, and that's what we've been doing for the last 6 years. So I met Christina. We connected many years ago, and our passion has been with the camel milk. I also have a personal journey as well.
Please, by all means, share.
My personal journey as well, because I have a chronic illness myself. I suffer from a form of IBD, irritable bowel disease, and which means I had to cut a lot out from my diet. All my favorite foods and drinks I couldn't eat anymore. I had to cut a lot of things out. One of them was milk. So I cannot drink milk, being lactose intolerant. So I had to switch away from dairy, and that's where the camel milk helped me to manage my condition to this day. So I wanted to share that with other people. I have a community, so we can benefit from the miracles of camel milk.
So, Mudassar, we have a lot of alternatives now away from dairy, like soya, maybe almond. What makes camel milk so unique, say, compared to these alternatives on health, and people with autism? Is there more than just anecdotal, what you yourself and Christina are sort of sharing with us? Is there actual sort of, scientific-based research or data to suggest this is something that's useful and beneficial for people of a autism background?
Well, there is scientific evidence and scientific research, which Christina can touch upon because she is very much of an expert in that sense. But in terms of anecdotal evidence, there's many case studies, or there's a lot of feedback that we've certainly received from our customers over the last 6 years. The camel milk has helped them. But the difference is because there's a lot of commercially produced products on the market, like you mentioned, soya, almond, coconut. Unfortunately, they're not natural, and they can be very harmful for our bodies with what they contain. So camel milk itself, it's natural, it's raw. Certainly the one that we provide is completely raw. There's nothing added in there. It's a natural food. So that's why, going back to the Bedouins in the Middle East, my friends who taught me about the camels, 15, 16 years ago, they live on a simple diet, camel milk and dates. That's all they have. And that keeps them going for years. And it's been around for thousands and thousands of years. It's not a new thing. It's not a fad. It's not a new thing. People tend to make jokes, they laugh at you, or they tend to pin you down because it's a new thing. But going back to religion, our religion, me as a Muslim, camels are mentioned in the Quran many times. We forget the importance of camels in our own religion. We are quick to criticize when someone tries to do something for the goodness of our community and for our own well-being. The Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned many ahadith, the benefits of the milk, how we can help to cure many diseases. So really, unfortunately, again, we are dealing with the stigma, even with our services, and there's a taboo still, stated in our community. We have been trying to address for the last 6 years, and we've come a long way. We're a very small organization through the support of our community, but there is still a challenge that we're trying to address, i.e., to make the awareness of the milk available for everybody, not just in one community. In that community, we are very inclusive in what we have been doing and very diverse in our operations. Whether it's through connecting with Christina, with raising the awareness of camel milk, autism activities, whether it's been supporting other special needs initiatives. But again, what we're trying to really achieve or try to call out is an end to stigma and the taboo, or at least a better understanding, because there is a taboo, as we all know, in the community. There is a taboo with like camel milk, unfortunately, as well. And it's not been an easy journey, but we are very grateful for what we have achieved over the last 6 years. All of it very small, and we do hope that we can continue to achieve better things with the support of our community.
No, most definitely there. You've sort of pointed out quite a number of points, but I certainly want to echo one way about the lack of awareness and education around this particular topic is astounding. I for one wasn't aware of it, so I put my hands up. Just a sort of question that does come to my mind is the actual taste. Obviously, I'm sure you both of you have tasted it and it's part of your daily diet. What does it taste like compared to the normal dairy milk that I consume buying from my local supermarket? Christina, you first, please.
Well, first of all, to address a little of the points so people can understand, there is a lot of scientific research now. When I started, there was almost none. I wrote a science article myself that's now been cited many times, and there's a lot more research. So I not only rounded that up in my writing of Camel Crazy, then I also contributed all my thousands of families' anecdotes to that knowledge base. And Camel Crazy does have the user's guide in the back that talks about how to use it, how does it work, how do you do it, all that kind of stuff. So the number one thing that's so funny about the taste is when people will try it, they'll lift up a little cup, like a sample cup, and they'll go, ooh, and they'll shiver. What's it going to taste like? And they go, oh, it just tastes like milk. And of course, that's because it is milk. And being that non-allergenic milk that it is, it's kind of preferable to me to soy, rice, and those other non-dairy milk, because rice can be an allergen to people that take too much of it. And soy also, there's some issues with it, depending on who you want to listen to. But then almond milk, which is a big thing, sucks a tremendous amount of water out of the ground here in California. And camels are great for the environment. It takes so much less water to get milk from them than it does any other dairy animal. And with our climate issues going on, it's just a perfect animal.
No, thank you. And same with you, Mudassar. In terms of taste, of camel milk compared to the normal dairy milk. Sorry, we lost you, Mudassar. We can't hear you for some reason. Yeah, sorry. No. Unfortunately, I'll get the studio manager to try and sort of get your sound to come back, but I certainly can't hear you. Christina, were you able to hear Mudassar then?
No, not right now.
No. I think something's happened to your voice. We are sort of coming towards the end of the show, Christina. I'm going to sort of ask you to maybe give your final thoughts now, in terms of you as a parent coming through your journey as well, and your sort of maybe your key learns about living with autism, especially with a son. And I was going to ask maybe Mudassar to maybe give a number out, or where would we be able to source if we were interested in getting camel milk. I'm Miss Rudiman, will try and get him back. But if you got any information, please do share that with our audience.
Yes, I do. So first of all, I will say, as my experience as a parent, it's been all-consuming, which autism in your children is a big deal, and it tends to consume everything. A lot of the parents lose their ability to work. A lot of the kids, are going to miss out on potential. So any supports are important. You can't do this alone. It's a high-risk problem if you don't have proper support. A lot of the children can run away and they can die. They drown. There's a high risk of drowning. They can fall off things. And a lot of the mothers and fathers have extreme stress, which causes problems in marriage and their own health. So you have to reach out to others. You really do. There's no shame in it. I know a lot of people are nervous about that. The only way to help yourselves and your family is to reach out to others. And you're going to find your true friends when you reach out. And join the autism community wherever you are. And don't be afraid of meeting adults with autism. You can be really great friends. And I have some myself. So that's really important. And as I said, in the UK, there are support groups. I've looked into that before. There are many around in Birmingham and some other parts. So they're out there on the internet. And third of all, I guess I would say, as far as the milk, Mudassar does sell it in the UK. He also carries Camel Crazy, so people are able to buy the book with the instructions and the information and everything they want. They can give it to their doctor. They can read it. It's also a personal story of my survival, on my own journey to appreciate the amazing gifts that our earth has to offer and that our pastoral people, such as the Waika in India, and such as the Bedouins and other parts of the world, they have so much to offer us. So come on that journey, give yourself some relaxation, and then come out and connect with other people. And then, of course, the doctor can tell you that Hump is available. They can sell you their milk and the book together. And I believe he has a Facebook site. In case we can't hear him, he's on Facebook, and he's also on Instagram at Hump Group.
Fine, thank you, Mudassar. If you can just give your final thoughts, and if anyone is interested in maybe getting in contact with maybe procuring or purchasing some camel milk for themselves or their family, how would they go about doing that?
Oh, I think we lost him. Well,
I think we've.
yeah.
Come on, Christina.
Okay, well, that's fine because I'm familiar with what he does, and he does a great job. He really does a community outreach. That's one reason I really appreciate what Mudassar does. He does a community outreach. He cares deeply about the community, and he puts a lot of hours into this. So he's on Instagram at Hump Group. He's on Facebook at Hump Group. I myself have a website, ChristinaAdamsAuthor.com, and then I'm also on Instagram, Christina Adams Author. I'm on Twitter, Christina Think. On Facebook, Christina Adams Author. So if you want to find out how to get the milk, you can reach me, but you can also, of course, find him on Hump Group. And we'll be happy to support you in any way possible.
Thank you, Christina. Mudassar, we're just going to give you one more opportunity. If someone is interested in getting the camel milk, how would they go about doing it here in the UK?
Yes, apologies for the technicalities. Yes, so we are on social media under Hump Group, HUMPGROUP. That's on Instagram and also on Facebook under Hump Group. You can also email us at hello, HELLO, at humpgroup.co.uk. Alternatively, they can visit our community here in Birmingham. You find those details on our social media pages, and we will be very happy to supply and support our community with Christina's books, which I have here. These are the exclusive author signed books by Christina of Camel Crazy. And we do have, of course, the milk and they'll be Ramadan very soon, in a few days' time. And the best combination we probably think of would be is camel milk updates that are come from Palestine. So they would be the ideal Bedouin recipe for the next 30 days of Ramadan.
No, thank you. I think you've got your first customer here, so I will call you after this show to take you up on your offer. Just got quite a few pleasant comments coming through, but one last comment I'm going to read out for you. Thank you, Christina and Mudassar, for taking your valuable time out. Very informative, very inspiring. Keep up the great work. I think that's a great way to end this show. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Mudassar, for today. Really informative and very illuminating for me as well. So really appreciate it on behalf of ZMC Network. That was Christina and Mudassar talking about autism. What does it mean? And not being so judgmental and accepting people are wired differently. People have different ways of behaving, and especially when they are young, please do not try to pass any kind of judgment or try to get them to conform. Allow them to grow naturally. And now with some anecdotal evidence around camel milk, that may be a solution in terms of getting them to calm down and being more, should we say, more orthodox and regulating their behavior. I hope you found the program useful. thank you as always for accompanying me on this journey. Until next week, please look after yourselves and each other. God bless.